Welcome to the Sport Exchange with me, John Robbie. Hi guys, welcome to the Sport Exchange podcast where we meet sporting personalities and learn about their lives and their life stories. On the Sport Exchange podcast this week, we meet a coach in one of the toughest sports in the world by far. And I speak as an ex-rugby international. These athletes are, well, how can I put it, insane. Welcome national triathlon coach and former Olympian Kate Roberts. Kate, thanks for coming in. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Are you insane? Triathletes?
Not anymore.
Well, of course you've retired. Very good. Yeah. Triathletes who are involved in the sport, are they insane? I suppose you have to be a little bit.
Indeed, yeah. It's a tough sport, so you've got to be a little bit on the insane side, but it's, once you entered it, and I really love it. I really loved it, and I loved my career, and I'm still involved, so it's great to be involved and to be able to give back to the sport that gave me so much throughout my career.
When I look at, the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games or something, and I see these guys, and they've done the swim, and they're 3/4 of the way through the cycling, and I'm exhausted just watching them. And I think, what is going through their mind? Because they still have to complete the last transition and then do what must be a very difficult road. Tell us about the mental process of top-level competitive triathlon.
Yeah, so I used to compete in the Olympic distance, which was a 1,500-meter swim, a 40-kilometer cycle, and a 10-kilometer run. So obviously you prepare and train so that you're good over all three disciplines. In terms of the swim, it was a really, really critical part of the race because that's kind of set you up for a good race. So if you had a bad swim, you either chase pack or not in a pack, and then it's very difficult to make it up on the bicycle leg because everyone's drafting at the elite level. So the swim is really important to make sure that you can get into the pack and in that, once you were in the pack, in the main pack, you kind of had this mental aspect where you had to really try and save your legs for as much as you could on the run. However, if you were in a breakaway, then you obviously had to work hard to stay away from the chasing pack. So it was always very tactical kind of racing.
It's almost like trade-offs, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it just depended on how you kind of set yourself up in the race after the swim and the bike. And then the run, that's where everyone sees where the race is won on the run. So you really had to make sure that you had a good transition 2, as they call it, come off near the front. You don't want to come off near the back in a pack of 40 athletes because you're starting a 10K running race 15 to 20 seconds behind everyone. So you wanted to make sure you got to the front, got in the pack, and then they always used to say that, the last, used to make sure that you save yourself for the first 6Ks, and then things start happening in the last 4Ks where you could sort of make a break and play mental games. And obviously, in 2012, when I raced at the Olympics, the winners were decided on a photo finish. Like they couldn't decide who the winner was and who came second, and it was only decided about an hour after the race, after looking at the photo finish numerous times, to see who'd won the race. And actually, the girl that ended up second, we were training partners in the 4 years leading up to that. Who was that? Lisa Norden from Sweden.
Yes.
So that was a very exciting race, and it's right down to the last minute. So
I was amazed because to me, and again, as a complete outsider, the swimming almost looks irrelevant. Now, I'm not saying it's not tough. Open water swimming is tough, and you see those arms going like windmills sometimes in choppy water. Now, I understand how difficult it is, but from the outside, the advantage that the first swimmer gets it seems so insignificant when you consider the distance of the cycling and the running. And yet people in the sport, again, tell us how significant it is. Go through again exactly how difficult the swimming is and why it's so important.
So in triathlon, you always say you can never win the race on the swim, but you can certainly lose the race on the swim, because a bad swim will set you up to sit in a bad cycling pack. So if you're near the front of the swim, you get out of the water and you get straight into the main cycling pack. So you're not having to chase as hard in the first 5 kilometers of the bike. Those that are coming out 20, 30 seconds back to get into that main chase pack, they're absolutely redlining themselves to get in there.
Yeah.
And the girls that are in the front, or the girls and boys that are in the front, have got in there comfortably sitting in there. And either they're chasing hard to stay away, which they could be doing, But the ones at the back, to get themselves back into the race, they really have to redline those first 5Ks. And that swim, the swim to the first transition to the bike, the first 5Ks of the bike in ITU race is critically important. You mess those 3 up and you set yourself up for a bad race. For example, if you have a good swim, but you mess up your transition and you miss the pack, I mean, that's going to cost you dearly. It can cost you from getting into the main pack, getting into the chase pack. The chase pack can come off 1.5 minutes behind the main pack. So then that's your race is over.
I've got it. I finally understand it. The transitions always sound fraught, always look fraught with danger. You know, you're wet, you're changing shoes, you're getting. It almost looks like there should be a better way to do that. Is it always going to be like that, or is there a better way to do it, do you think?
So we always say transitions are the fourth discipline of triathlon. A lot of people don't always place enough focus on them. It's a really critical in part of the race, especially T1. A bad T1 and you don't make that cycling pack. So in the transition, your mental aspect has to be sort of going there fast but slow, because if you mess up, like you can sit there and struggle, your hands can be cold from the water and you can struggle to get your helmet clipped in. And sitting there for 5 seconds trying to clip your helmet in can cost you the difference between making the chase pack and the main pack. Or struggling to get your bike out of transition, or, it's always a bit, it's a bit chaos in the transition. Lots happen. So you gotta try and always make sure that you can get yourself out of danger. Just, especially in the girls racing, a lot of girls don't quite know how to mount their bike. Fall over in front of you. You've got to try and get around them.
How do you know where your how do you know where everything is?
Yeah, it's just a planned process. Like once you rack, I always tell my athletes, walk through the transition and look for kind of a marker. There might be a tree next to your rack, or or a sign, or know that you rack next to the pink bike. So you've got to look for markers that you know exactly where your bike is racked. Obviously, at the highest level, you're numbered. So I'm number 10 or number 11. I'm racked on the left or the right. So what the pros normally do is they rack their bikes and then they kind of walk through the transition, just to have that sort of mental picture where exactly their bike is. And then they walk through, and that's kind of how they walk through both sides, coming off the bike and coming out of the swim.
Is there much talking? Because I mean, people are amazed when I tell in rugby how Divan Surfontaine and I, the first scrum and so on, I'd say, "Hi, Divan, how you doing? How's the family?" "Well, yeah, good game." Not, they can't believe it because rugby is this big, tough one, but you get to know the people and so on. And we were amazed when we spoke to some of the cricketers about the obscenities that go on in cricket in the sledging. What is it like in triathlon? Is there talking? Is there chatting? Is it friendly? Is it tactical? Give us a feeling for the communications on the road or the bike.
So in terms of the community of triathlon, it's a very close-knit community. So
that's what I'm getting at, yeah.
So everyone goes to races, they go to the same races, they get to know each other, they become friends outside of the racing environment. We always say that you so-and-so the triathlete outside of the racing environment, and once you're in the racing environment, you've got your race cap on, and then that's, who's ever the best on the day. So during the race, there can be quite a lot of mental games going around, especially in the bike packs.
Like what? Give us an example.
So if you're in the chase pack and you want to really catch the main pack, you often find a lot of people in the chase pack that are not willing to work. They're just willing to stay there. And it's kind of, it's kind of known that you don't have to work. There's no rule that says you have to be in the front helping catch. But
because there's so much slipstreaming, so everybody has to do their legwork, yeah. So
the guys in the front normally, get really upset, and they can become quite vocal in the pack in terms of, make sure, come through, why you're not coming through, why you're not doing the turns, or if they come through and do their turns but half-heartedly, then they'll just tell them, get to the back.
And does the language get quite bad?
The language is really intense, so it can be quite tough. And then also if you're in the front pack, and they don't want the chasers to catch, and you're not pulling your turn, then there's a lot of vocal language going on in the pack, and either you get to the back or you really got to help them, and then they often try and drop you so that they can be in a pack that's willing to work. And so the Brownlee brothers from Great Britain,
the UK, they're amazing, eh? They're
very, very vocal in packs, and people are really scared of them just because they're obviously very good, and they're not scared to shout at someone. Where there is a junior and just hanging on for dear life, they couldn't care.
Yeah.
You come through, do your turn. if you're in this pack, you do your turn. So they're very vocal in that way. And it obviously works for them because they get off in the main pack and make sure that when they get off that their pack has really worked hard and well together. And then some athletes, just because they're brothers, so intimidated by them.
Yeah.
Will come off and not be able to run at all because they're totally
I'm intimidated by them watching on television because they look like tough little buggers. I was amazed at how new triathlon is. I mean, modern triathlon only started in 1974. There had been attempts at various things, and it only became an Olympic sport in 2000. I mean, when were you attracted to it, or were you involved in other sports that morphed into triathlon? Tell us about your journey.
Because I came from a swimming and a running background, which is what
from Bloem, eh?
From Bloemfontein, came from. I swam and I ran competitively, more so running.
What was your distance?
So I used to do the 1,500 meter on the track and the 3,000 meter, and then obviously swam. For school galas and.
Was Zola Bud your heroine? Really? Zola Peterson?
Well.
Gosh, she's lovely, yeah? Do you stay in touch with her at all?
Yeah, so she's based in America, and we still keep in touch.
Will you please pass on my regards? When I was doing a sports program on radio, every Saturday we used to have a guest in, and I did it for, I think, 2 years. Every Saturday I had a guest in, and in that whole time, 2 sports people sent me a note. There was no emails or SMSs in those days. Sent a letter to say thank you very much. One was the late Eddie Lewis, the ex-Manchester United soccer player, and the other was Zola Bud, and I still have the letter at home. So please pass on best regards. So what were your ambitions then, swimming or athletics?
So kind of both, and I kind of thought, okay, maybe running was better, and I thought, at that stage, I just swam because my school my school was quite good at swimming.
What was your school?
Unisi Girls School in Bloemfontein. So swimming was quite a big sport at school, so I kind of did swimming, for school, and athletics wasn't as big, coming from an all-girls English school. But I was obviously quite talented at that stage, and then I kind of got into athletics and had some talent in that, and then I kind of enjoyed my running. Obviously,
and what were your ambitions? I mean, were you thinking Olympics at that stage?
So from 1992, I watched that Olympics when South Africa were allowed back in.
Alana Meyer.
She inspired the flame for me to go to the Olympics. And I mean, at that stage, I was going to go as a runner just because of what Alana had done. But I still kept my swimming up. And then it must have been about 1996, they started talking about triathlon, and it's going to become an Olympic sport in the year 2000. And then I was kind of interested in what triathlon involved because I knew it involved swimming and running. I mean, at that stage, I didn't cycle at all. And then, I watched in 2000, I watched the Olympics, obviously on TV, at the Sydney Olympics. And I just knew that that's the sport I wanted to do. So
was it a light bulb moment and you said, this is it?
Yep, that was it. And, I was 17 at the time, and I said, I'm going to get into triathlon, and I'm going to go to the Olympics as a triathlete. So I always knew I wanted to go to the Olympics, but then in 2000, it became, okay, now I'm going to go for triathlon. And then that was towards the end of my school career, which is not so I had that swimming and running background, which really helps. And that's kind of when you identify talent, you go look for the swimmers and the runners.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Now that you're coaching, and this is important for maybe people who've got kids or youngsters who are listening to this, of the 3, I mean, very few are going to be top in all 3 right from the beginning. So what is the ideal mix? From a youngster where you say, this is someone I can take all the way? So
if you first look for a swimmer, someone that's going to be able to...
That's number 1.
That's number 1.
Right.
A swimmer that you can make into a runner.
Right.
So what we say is we should actually, have...
A skinny swimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone that's doing well in swimming, but, swimming is a very tough sport, and they're not quite going to get to the Olympic level, but they're very good at swimming. So Henry Schoeman, our Olympian that won the bronze medal.
Yes.
This 2016, he comes from a swimming background. Brother was Rian Schoeman, also an Olympic swimmer. And he swam all his life. Towards the end of his school career, he was this very small guy, started up running. So when he first started triathlon, he used to swim away from everyone.
Yeah.
Cycling was awful initially. And then running wasn't bad because he was a small guy. But he obviously developed that over 3 to 4 years. And, a few years later, he was bronze medalist behind the 2 Brownlee brothers at the Olympic Games. So that's the epitome of what you want to look for when you identify talent for ITU racing. So you look for a swimmer that you can make into a runner, and then cycling is the easiest, or they say it's the easiest to pick up out of the 3 disciplines.
How did you find it? Because you were a swimmer, runner, and then cycling. I mean, tell us the first time you got on a bike in a triathlon.
Yeah, the first time I got on a bike, I was really bad. I mean, I was terrible. I'd lost something like 10 to 20 minutes alone on a 20-kilometer cycle. I was okay on the run, really bad, and the swim, but the cycle was terrible. And then obviously I had to pick up the skills, but they say the more time you spend on the bike, the better you're going to be at it. So I just had to, spend more time on the bike, and slowly I progressed. I did that. When I first started, it was all about, so that's the kind of thing that I do now. I'm involved in junior coaching, and then junior coaching is a lot of skill development that you need to acquire to be able to be a good triathlete, like bike skills and transitions. So when I kind of started out, there wasn't any of that kind of coaching available. So you were just told to swim, run, and cycle. So when I went to my first Olympics in 2008, you could say I was a very raw athlete. Like I wasn't very developed in skills on the bike. I mean, I didn't really know how to pull turns and that kind of thing. Obviously I got to the Olympics. But after the Olympics in 2008, I sort of had to make that decision about whether I was going to go another Olympic Games or whether I was going to, do something else with my life.
How tough was that?
It wasn't that tough, because I kind of felt that in 2008, I still had I had a lot to give to get to a better result, and that definitely wasn't the best of me. And I hadn't maximized my talent or my potential. So I felt that I needed to go to another Olympics, to see if I could do better. And what I did was I knew that I needed to change something if I wanted to do better, because I was kind of looking at what the other girls were doing around me. And I realized that I needed to get expert coaching.
And this is when you went overseas and got an Australian coach.
Yes.
Is that right? How did you do that? Let's just take a step. What were you doing then? I mean, because one of my questions is, you must look at rugby and cricket and soccer and athletics and boxing at these superstars, tennis now with Kevin Anderson and Raven Klaasen and so on. And yet, until very, very recently, triathletes who are at the top of their sport hardly got a page in the newspapers, etc. In terms of looking at career, looking at sponsorship, paying the bills, paying the travel, etc. Tell us where you were before you made the decision to go overseas.
Yeah, so financially I had to make decisions, and I remember sitting my parents down and saying, look, I want to go another 4 years to the Olympics.
Were they funding you?
Not really. So they funded me for the first few years. And then my dad kind of said, look, I know this is your dream, but it's not something that I can fund completely. So what I had to do was go and try and find myself sponsorship. Obviously, whatever I made in race winnings, I put back into the sport to try and fund my Olympic campaign, because it wasn't a very cheap process. It was extremely expensive. But I knew that if I wanted to go and race overseas with my Australian coach, that was going to be even more expensive. So what I did was I put a budget together, found out how much exactly it's going to cost. Then had to go speak to my sponsors, speak to people, tell them what my goal was, and had to get them on board.
How tough is that? Because, in a way, you're going cap in hand, but of course you're also not. You're saying, as a sponsor, I can give you a return for sponsoring me. Were you good at that, or did you find that difficult?
I found it difficult because you're kind of having to go to people and saying to them, look, this is my goal. I can't guarantee you it's going to work out, but I'm very motivated to do that, and that's kind of what I want to do, and I'm going to do my best to get there. And you kind of have to entice them, to come on board with your journey. Luckily, I had good sponsorships at the time, and they came on board. Who
did you approach? Who came?
So at that stage, I was sponsored by Red Bull, and they were very good, very lucrative, and very helpful. And then because I was going over to Australia, I got into touch with an Australian company, and I said, look, I'm coming over to Australia. I'm going to race here with you guys. This is my goal. Is there any chance you can help me? And they actually came on board as well.
Who were they?
They were a company called Chocolate Graphics.
Yeah. So you just picked them out of a phone book, so to speak.
Well, they were kind of involved. No, they were kind of involved in triathlon, and I kind of picked this up. And then I kind of got in touch with the CEO and asked him, and he said, that's, he's happy because he was sponsoring Australian girls at that stage.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm from South Africa, and he was quite keen to get a sort of an international little group sponsorship going. So that's kind of how I got in touch.
Fantastic. And at this time, this journey, because you're involved in this insane sport, and I say it again in the nicest way, I'm envious, and yet it's in a way finding its feet. It's becoming an Olympic sport, becoming an incredible spectator sport, which it is. And yet you as a young South African who decided, you had your light bulb moment, I want to go to the Olympics, I want to do this, and yet paying the bills, looking at career, looking at education, etc. Tell us about your thoughts on that. And was that difficult? What did you do? How did you handle that?
Yeah, so in terms of education, my dad said to me, look, I know you want to go to the Olympics and I know this is something you really want to do, but I first want you to make sure that you get something behind you before you do that. So that was really important to him. And at the time, I wasn't that keen to do it, but, because I knew that if I didn't do it, he wasn't going to show me the support further on.
That's what dads do.
So
you've
got to try and identify your support network. So what I did was I stayed at home in Bloem and I did I just did a BCom degree.
Right.
Obviously doing triathlon quite competitively at that stage, but racing locally.
Yeah. Did you finish the BCom?
I finished the BCom.
Oh, well done, eh?
And once I did that, then my dad was like, okay, now we can. And that was I finished in 2005. And then in 2006, the Olympic campaign started. So it's a 2-year process where you have to gain points racing across the world on your Olympic ranking. So then I did that from 2006 to 2008, got to the Beijing Olympics. And then I made that next transition to go to London with my new coach. Obviously trying to find sponsors and
what was it like changing to a famous Australian coach? Was it very different? Did it take it up a notch? Was it tougher? Give us an idea of what you were doing before and after you changed coach.
So yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience for me. But before I went, I was just kind of I had a coach called Libby Burrell who was helping me, but she was also helping me from a distance, so she was very involved, but she wasn't quite seeing my hands-on coaching at that time. So she'd send me programs and I was obviously very motivated and disciplined and I got on with the programs. But then when I went to Darren, it was a completely different mindset of training. It wasn't about how much training we're doing in the week. It was about doing the right training, getting the most out of every session, him being at the training sessions. And he kind of said to me I wasn't tough enough, I needed to become tough to be able to make it at this high level. So he did a lot of mental games with me.
Like what?
Just like
cruelty.
Yeah, cruelty.
I can see you smiling. Tell us about it, because so much in sport now, it's about the mental side rather than the physical side, because everyone has got physical development. Tell us more.
So, when I got there, I was very raw. I really had to pick up my cycling skills quite drastically. And, he just used to say to me, like, I can't believe that, that you've got to this high level with these terrible cycling skills, And it was true. Like I really wasn't up to standard. So he had to really teach me how to cycle properly.
Did he reduce you to tears? Did he shout at you? Did he abuse you, so to speak?
I wouldn't say abuse me, but there were definitely tears days where you're so tired and you say to him, look, I'm really tired today. And he's just like, well, this is a session. Let's see how you go. And then he knew that I was tired that day and he was going to get into my head, you know, and say to me, okay, we're doing a session, it's going to be a few 1Ks on the track. So then I'll be like, okay, cool. So I'll start the first one and then I'll be like, okay, he's like, hey, minute rest, do the next one. After 5, 6, you start like, okay, when am I going to finish the session? And then he'll be like, I'll just keep going. And then next one, just keep going. Eventually you're sitting there doing 15 to 18.
So he's trying to break you.
He's trying to break you and he's trying to see how you can handle it. And you don't want to let him down. You don't want to show that you've got a sign of weakness. And he's trying to see, are you tough enough for the sport? So you don't really need to train those distances. But he'd always say, like, I just want to see how tough you are. And because there are going to be times in the races where you think you can't get through it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to need to take up, find that extra gear. And there's always an extra gear. There's always another gear than you think there.
Did you ever think of quitting and going back to South Africa? Did you ever burst into tears and say, this is not for me?
Well, there were a few times where I was like, it's tough and I miss my family and, I'd phone home and my dad.
Where in Australia were you?
We were based in Canberra.
Canberra, not exactly the, centre of Australian social life.
Exactly. And my dad just said to me, you signed up for this. Now you got to see it through, which was true. Like, don't back out, And he was always like, if you're going to do it and you want to see it through, you got to, and he knew that Darren was obviously having my best interest at heart and what is necessary. But yeah, there were definitely times where I was very homesick, very tired of the day in, day out training. It got very monotonous. You had to rest, eat, train.
What was Australia like? I mean, Australia is an amazing place, as long as you don't criticize Australians. but it's a wonderful, wonderful place. Did you enjoy Oz?
Yeah, I loved Oz. I really loved Oz. I mean, it's very similar to South Africa in many ways. Good weather. People are friendly. People also have a very, towards sport, they love their sportsmen, so they really respect you. And I enjoyed that about them. And I had good training partners. So we were all kind of in the same boat. I was from South Africa. Then I had Lisa Norden from Sweden. I had Sarah Groff. She was from America. Vicky Holland from Great Britain.
That's like the United
so
Nations.
So we were like, all of us were in the same boat. And that really helped because we were all far away from home, all in this environment where Darren was on our case every day. So we kind of, built that camaraderie with each other. And that really, really helped.
Tell us about, and I'm sort of jumping now because obviously you're the coach. You're Darren now, okay?
Yeah.
What did you take from him and what did you change from him? Because your unique situation where you'd gone through this insane regime, I'm using the word again, this famous coach that made such a difference to you. And yet having been on the receiving end of it, you could also tweak it for your athletes now. So give us an idea of that. What have you taken from him and what have you changed?
So I took the professional aspect from Darren, it's not about doing the miles. It's not about just getting through the training. It's about doing it properly, running with good form, swimming with good form,
And planning and letting things know and not making it up as you go along. As an athlete, I always felt I needed a coach that had planned the session beforehand, yeah?
Yeah. So you're very good, very big in planning. Like he would take it day for day, like say to us, he'd obviously have his week planned ahead, what he wanted us to do, but it was very much based on how we felt that day. So he'd come to us in the morning and say, how are your numbers today? And then you have to tell him how you slept last night, how your heart rate, if your heart rate's up or down, if your anxiety levels are up or down, if your body soreness. So you explain that all to him. You give him a number out of 5. And then he'd adjust the session accordingly to how you felt based on the previous day's training. So that's kind of what every athlete was different. So not all of us did the same training every day in, day out. He tweaked the training specifically towards our needs. And I mean, just in terms of planning, from your races to your training, to your eating, to your sleeping, that was very, very meticulous about that. And he always said to us, proper planning prevents poor performance. So it was the 5 Ps. And that's something that I like to, try and it's not that you want them to be, my juniors to be so, serious at this stage.
Yeah, they've got to have a bit of fun. They've got to enjoy it.
Have fun. But you just want to instill those good habits now for them so that they know that if they want to go, into it professionally, that these are the kind of things that they need to think about.
Do you think being a female coach I'm on dangerous territory now in the current environment, is an advantage, a disadvantage, any difference at all between a male and a female coach?
I think there's definitely a difference. I can't exactly tell you what it is. I'm a lot more soft on my athletes. For me, it's about obviously them having fun.
Mother figure.
Yeah. Having fun, trying to get the best out of them. I remember from my time with Darren, when he was on my side and really motivated me, then I performed well. When he saw that I wasn't training as hard or pulling my weight as much, he almost didn't care as much, and I find those were the hard times for me, when I really needed him to be on my side and he wasn't always there for me. But when I was going well, he was really on my side and really motivated me. But I can see why he was like that, because I'm now in a situation where someone's not pulling the weight and I'm getting really irritated with them and I'm just like, I don't care about them anymore, because you as a coach, you kind of
let you down.
Yeah, let you down. You kind of put your energies into those that are giving you, their best. So I can see why he was like that with me, but also at the same time, I know sometimes things outside of the coaching or training environment make them that way. So you got to try and look at all aspects of why athletes not pulling their weight, what's going on.
Well, I've looked at your Facebook page and I love some of the stuff you put on there. And I love the way you praise your athletes who've done well. I mean, I've never heard of any of them. And yet I look at them now and I thought, if I was an athlete and here's the coach putting in public, thank you, well done, congratulations, etc. So obviously that motivational side, the carrot rather than the stick is something you're very, very big in.
Yeah, I really believe in that. If you're going to motivate your athletes, you're going to get the best out of them. Everyone's at a different point in their life. Some are doing really well at this stage. You can see the potentials in other. You can see that, some are just loving it and giving their best every day. And you can't just look at the athletes that are doing the best, So I always praise those that are, whether at the back or, at the front, if they're giving their best in a race, in training sessions, I'm always praising them, always saying to them how proud I am of them. And that's what I love about my coaching.
Was there a stage, and you've described very well the pre-Darren stage, Darren, excuse me, the pre-Australian Darren stage and the after. Was there a moment or a race or an event where you said, I'm at a different level, it's working, I've got it? Was there a aha moment?
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us about that.
So I went to Darren at the end of 2008. 2009 wasn't the best of years because I was struggling to understand what exactly Darren wanted from me. And for me, I came from that training mindset where the more I trained, the better I was going to be. And he kind of told me it's not what I need from you, And
typical South African mentality.
Typical South African, and
quantity, not quality.
Yeah, and I used to get very frustrated with that. But at the same time, I was very loyal to Darren. We also come from a South African mentality to respect your elders, respect your coach.
Yes.
So if you found that something wasn't working for you, you wouldn't really test him or, go up against him. And then I came back in 2009. I was like, I'm not sure if this is working. And I kind of sat him down towards the end of the season. I said, look, I didn't have the best of seasons. What do I need to do? And he said, this is what you kind of need to change, from his perspective. Also then I came back and I got involved. I got myself a sports psychologist because I knew that training with Darren was something that he could get into my head, and I also needed to know how to handle him. So she helped me through that. And I went back in 2010, understanding.
How important was that? The psychology side of things.
Yeah, it was very important for me to understand. And she explained to me, look, you're you're South African, you're scared to tell him what you're feeling.
Yeah.
She said you need to get out of, you need to challenge him in that way.
Because that was quite progressive in those days. Wasn't it a sport? Nowadays, everyone's got one. But in those days, that was quite progressive.
Exactly, yeah. You didn't really tell anyone you were going to see a support psychologist.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was what I needed. And she really helped me. And then I went back in 2010. And I got really fit. I listened to what Darren told me. I didn't question what he told me. But at the same time, I was firm with him. I said, look, this is working, this isn't working. And we had a few tiffs, so to speak, which I'd never had with him the year before. But then we started bonding as a coach-athlete relationship. And I did my first race in 2010. And I was like, I couldn't believe where I was in the race. I was right up there near the best. And then
which race was that?
That was a World Cup race in Mululaba in Australia. And, I was sitting there with the medals, and I just couldn't believe it because the year before I was like 30th or 20th, I was nowhere near that top level. And in 2010 I had my best year, I ended up ranked number 7.
7 in the world.
Yeah, so that was
that's unbelievable, eh?
Yeah, so I was really happy with that. And it was all because it wasn't that I trained harder. It was just I trained smarter and I listened to Darren. And I knew, I asked him what was, I challenged him in terms of what was best for me and what I knew was best for me. So things really worked well in 2010.
And how did that affect things like sponsorship? Because there's that old adage that you can't get sponsorship until you don't need it.
Yeah.
Did you find then sponsors were tripping over themselves to speak to you?
Yep, that's exactly what happened. And they were all over me. Everyone wanted to have a piece of me, and people wanted to, people couldn't understand why, where I'd come from. The year before, I really wasn't up to that standard. And then I suddenly made that big gap. Was
there any suspicion? Because one of the things, and I've read articles about it, that in athletics, we've seen doping. We've seen doping, cycling, we've seen doping, athletics. So in 2 of your 3, and even in swimming, etc. And yet triathlon seems to be squeaky clean, etc. Have you ever come across anything untoward? And when you had this incredible improvement, was there ever any suspicion?
There may have been suspicion. I'm not sure. Obviously I didn't hear it firsthand. I know that there was suspicion within Darren's squad because he was kind of the coach that took people being very raw. That was his kind of, what he was known for, taking athletes that were very raw, back of the packers, in the game, but not in the game. And then he took them from 0 to hero, basically. So there was initially some suspicion within the group. But Darren always had, he was always about hard work and the things that he made us do better at with a skill environment and that kind of thing. So obviously I know there was nothing involved there, and
is there regular testing?
Yeah, there was regular testing and stuff.
Because I know there was when the Russian Olympic scandal came, there were some triathletes who were involved, and the triathlon bodies allowed them back into the Olympics, which was quite controversial at the time. I mean, when I look at triathlon on is it clean?
You have to believe that it's clean. Yeah. And that's what I tell everyone. Everyone asks me, and I said, yes, I believed everyone was clean, because if I didn't, then, my motivation to race I wouldn't have been able to race.
You don't want to be with
You don't want to be,
yeah.
So whenever I was racing, I never for 1 minute thought anyone was dirty or doping. I think it's a relatively clean sport. There have been athletes that have been caught. In terms of triathlon, it's not a very rich sport. So I always say it's like for athletes to cheat, it costs a lot, and triathletes aren't that rich or don't have that big teams behind them to be able to do it. So your cycling is a lot richer in terms of there's a lot more money behind it, and there's a lot more incentive to dope, and doping is expensive, but they can do it with their teams or whatever. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but back in the day with the postal, US Postal Service and stuff, there was lots of budget for them to cheat and stuff, which is not the same in triathlon. So,
but it might be one day, because again, as somebody who's completely from the other side of sport, I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And even talking to you about behind it, particularly the swimming side of things, that has opened it up completely. Because if a sport is good on television, it'll end up being very, very popular.
Yeah.
Look at snooker and darts, for goodness sake, and then you look at hockey and you look at squash, which aren't good on television, and the difference there. I mean, could you see triathlon exploding?
Could, yeah, definitely. Definitely could. Whether cheating is going to be involved, I'm not sure. You just hope that there's enough budget to test the athletes appropriately. And I think a lot of athletes also they don't think they're cheating, but they're definitely maximizing those limits. They're within the limits, but they're not cheating, which is effectively also cheating.
What do you mean? Things like medical?
They
AIDS.
Yeah, so they need a cortisone injection, TUEs, do asthma medication.
Yeah.
They don't really need the asthma medication, but they know it's going to give them a little slight advantage. So
that's very interesting. Was your Olympic sorry to interrupt. Was your Olympic experience good or was it bad? Because the Olympics is this pinnacle of so many sports, and yet politics, bad organization, we know, and I'm not having a go at anybody, but we've heard from some people. For example, Natalie DeToy told us that the Paralympics was so much more fun than the Olympics, which in a way was staggering. Did you have good experience?
So I went, obviously Beijing was my first experience with the Olympics. I was very, I had no idea, what to expect. SASCOC, I believe they try their best, in getting and organizing that thing. And we had a manager, Carol Austin, who's involved in Dimension Day. So she was our manager at the time. So she obviously did her best as well. But there's so much going around Olympics. It's not your normal race. There's so much else to think about. You've got the village, and you've got to get to and from the village.
Logistics, I was going to say, yeah.
It's crazy. So going into Beijing, we were just a bit, we kind of went along with what we were told. Do this, do that. And I wouldn't say it was in our best interest, just because we didn't know any better. And when I got to London, I knew what I want. I knew what I'd done in the 4 years leading up to this, and I wasn't going to change that routine. So I kind of sat the manager down, who was then Lindsay Parry, who's the official comrades coach. So he was our manager in Beijing, and I said, "This is what I'm going to do." And he came on board, and so I went into London. I didn't spend much time in the village beforehand, just because it's a very stimulating environment.
Distractions.
Lots of distractions. So I think in Beijing we were there for 10 days beforehand, which was exhausting, because, we stayed far away from the dining halls. Every time you had to walk to and fro on your feet. London, I was only there for 3 days before the time. I was in my European base, we were training in Switzerland at the time, so I flew in 3 days before the time. I was only there for a short period, limited my distractions in the village, and I was a lot more mentally prepared. And
how did you do in London? I mean, you did incredibly well without medaling. Eh?
Yeah. So London was, it was a very disappointing race. So what happened was I was in absolute the best shape of my life. I mean, Darren and I couldn't have got myself into better shape. And what happened was obviously I'd been training with the girls that did really well in the race. Like I said, Lisa Norton came second, the American girl came fourth, and then there was another girl that came 11th. Annie Haug. She was from Germany. So I was in the best shape of my life. Darren said, if everything goes well, we can medal tomorrow. That was kind of where we were at. I had the best swim. I set myself up for the best race possible. I was in the main pack. I think it was a pack of 20 girls or so, exactly where I needed to be. And then on the very first lap of the bike, we went around Buckingham Palace, and the night before it had been raining, and there was a bit of
dew,
yeah,
wet, yeah,
and also it was a bit
slippy, yeah,
slippy. So an Australian girl, her name was Emma Moffat, she crashed out right in front of me. Her back wheel slid out. I went into the barrier, and I just got up as quick as I could. But with that stage, there was obviously a bit of commotion behind us, and then the leaders had gone. So I ended up going from leading pack to chasing pack.
And you've told us the disadvantage that is.
Yeah. So I came off the bike a minute and a half behind the leaders.
Oh, my goodness.
I ran myself up into 22nd position, but that run time would have put me probably 7th in the race. So had it not happened, and my goal was to get a top 10. That was kind of my goal.
How did that affect you then? Because obviously you're having to look at post competition, and yet you went on to the Commonwealth, and getting that silver team medal must have been amazing.
It was. Yeah, so after that I was devastated because I'd
put so much into that one race.
Into this one race, and
I've got goosebumps,
didn't work out as I'd planned. And everyone says, things happen in 4-year cycles when you're an Olympian. You just work towards that one race and then it's over, and then you've got to rethink things, and and it's always like, I'll think about it after the Olympics. So after I was devastated because I'd put so much into it and it hadn't worked out at the end of the day. But then, I obviously went for psychology afterwards, and they just said, look, it's not always about the outcome. It was about the process, and the process was a journey, and it was great. And how many people can say they've gone to 2 Olympics and traveled the world? And so there were lots of positives to take from the race. And I gave it my best shot. At the end of the day, I crossed the line and I gave it my best shot, and that's all I can ask for. But then I had to rethink, because after London, if things were going to go my way, after London, I was like considering moving off from the sport, because you kind of want to finish on a high. And I knew I was struggling. My motivation wasn't as high. When it obviously was high into London, but I knew after that it was wasn't gonna be as high. And after that, it wasn't as high because I'd worked to this race and I hadn't got the result I wanted, and my motivation went downhill. And I really had to think about, okay, what am I going to, I'm going to go another 4 years to the next Olympics, which was for me at that stage, after Beijing, it was easy. It was another 4 years. But after London, it was like, I don't know if I can do that, because there was so much hard work. Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I can do that again. And then the Commonwealth Games are coming up in Glasgow in 2014. And afterwards I sat down, I said, okay, let me get to the Commonwealth Games. And then, and then I'll see after that exactly how I feel motivation wise. That's what I did. And then I also wasn't sure if I should stay with Darren for after the Olympics, just because I'd been with him for 4 years, and
change is as good as a rest.
Yeah, exactly. So in hindsight, I went back to Darren in 2013, and it was the wrong thing for me because the group dynamics had changed. It wasn't the same group as it was in the lead up to the Olympics. A lot of the girls had moved on, and I decided to stay on, and there were new girls in the environment. And I wouldn't say I wasn't enjoying the environment as much as I was in the lead up to the Olympics. So in hindsight, I should have changed there. But then I decided at the end of 2013, okay. And then at that stage, I was like, I'm really missing home. I want to come back to South Africa. So I came back to South Africa, and that's when I based myself in Pretoria and trained there under Lindy's.
And you're still mates with Darren? Still friends?
Yeah, we're very good friends. Yeah, very good friends. So we didn't leave in bad terms, and we're very good friends.
And you got the silver in the Commonwealth Games. I mean, that moment, having described your journey and also the journey of your sport, I mean, to have reached a silver medal in the T is incredible. I mean, the moment when you realized you'd medaled.
Really, really special moment for me, because I knew it was the end of my career and I wanted to finish on a high. Like, that was really important to me.
Did you cry or shout in exultation?
Yeah, it was really special because, obviously it was a team relay, and that was a very exciting format. And you had to rely on the other members of the team. So I remember I had Richard and Henry in my team who were kind of newbies at that stage, and we had Gillian Sanders, and And I remembered like taking on the role of like, I need to motivate this team. You know, we need to explain to them exactly how.
So you're the senior partner in a way.
So I was like, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to start. I knew what my role was to be in the team. Then Henry's going to take over. And then Jill took over. And then Richard finished off for us. And that day was just special because all of us raced to our maximum, but even higher, you know, than we should have. You know, like everyone just had their A game on. They knew what we knew. We knew we wanted a medal. We weren't the favorites. No one was expecting us to medal. And we just put it together and all raced to our potential. And we came away with a silver medal. So that was really special for me. And just to stand on a podium at a major games was really, really special. And then after that, I kind of knew that, you know, I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do.
Did you know what you were going to do? Or did you say, my goodness, I've retired. What do I do now? I mean, now, and we're going to briefly talk about your coaching, etc., your business. Or did you know what you were going to do? Or was it, my goodness, what do I do now?
So I knew that my motivation to carry on towards Rio wasn't as high as it was going to be. And financially, things were becoming a struggle for me. So I wasn't able to race as much. And at that stage, one of my sponsors had pulled out. So I wasn't able to race as much. I wasn't making as much money as
Times were tough. Yeah.
Times were really tough. And then I just had to make the decision about like, okay, I've had this wonderful career. I've given it my all. Do you have any regrets? You know, do you still want to go out there and prove something? And I just said, no, there's nothing more I really want to prove. You know, going to my third Olympics would have been great. But, you know, was I going to be at the top of my game? I'm not sure because I wasn't as motivated. So I really had to make the decision. And I just said, look, I don't think I'm as motivated. I'm not going to invest this money because most of it is self-funded. I was 31 at that stage. And I knew that I didn't have any savings from my career. Like
I was going to ask, were you rich at this stage?
I was not rich at all. Everything I'd made, I'd put back into the sport to travel, to get the best out of myself. So I wasn't
You certainly didn't die wondering.
Yeah.
You didn't die wondering, yeah.
And I just thought, I'm not sure if I want to invest any more, like, you know, money, just to say I've gone to a third Olympics. And I couldn't expect my parents and, you know, like them to come on board at that stage. So I made the decision to call it a day. And I wasn't never regretful about my career because I felt like I'd given it everything.
But looking forward then, did you know I'm going to be a coach or did you have to look and say, what on earth can I do?
No. So what I'd done is I came back to South Africa. Things had obviously changed before I left South Africa. And when I came back, the coaching industry had changed. You know, there were a lot more coaches available. People were getting into coaching, making
and qualifications as well.
Yeah.
You now do coaching courses and so on.
People were doing coaching courses. People were running good businesses and doing well in coaching. And I thought, okay, I wouldn't say I'm going to be the best coach, but I could see an opportunity to work with juniors because no one was doing that. And I knew that the skills to make them good, stuff that Darren taught me, I could transfer that to them. So I was in Pretoria. And, you know, after that, towards the end of my career, I started speaking to people at the High Performance Centre in Pretoria, asking them if I could potentially set up a junior triathlon academy there. And then they said, yes, there's no problem. So that's kind of how I started.
And how, for example, do kids get involved? Do they get in touch with you and say, I'm a keen swimmer, I'm a keen runner, I'd love to do what? What's the process?
Yeah, it's normally word of mouth. So I started off very small, advertising and telling people what I was doing. And then so a few athletes came my way. And now I've got to the point where I don't...
And do they pay you? Or
yes.
they would pay you a stipend,
yes.
would you?
Well, monthly coaching fees that all adds up. So that's kind of how I worked it. Initially it was tough because I'd gone from this elite athlete where it's all about myself, you know, just having to think about myself, now having to think about a whole bunch of people and their needs. So that transition was quite tough for me. And then sort of knowing how to manage my own business, you know, that was also quite tough for me. Like, how do things work?
Tell me about it. Yes.
So that was tough for me. And then obviously I had to get my coaching qualifications, making sure that.
But it seems to be flying now. Again, looking at the number of athletes. Tell me in particular about Tsebo Botsane, because again, without being unkind, triathlon seemed to be sort of a fairly elite sport. We know that the gap in wealth in the country, etc. We know the transformation is huge. Now, I've looked at this young lady, and she looks like she's got immense potential.
Yeah. So Sebo came to me when that first year I started coaching, and she said to me she likes swimming and she likes running and a little bit of cycling. She just had a mountain bike at that stage, and she came from a very poor background. And I said to her, come, if you can come to my sessions, you can come and we can set you up. So it was 2015. And then obviously I had a friend that worked at CISA, which is a company in Pretoria, and he was involved in triathlon. And there's the Tuck Sport High School in Pretoria. So I said to him, look, what are the possibilities of, getting Sebo a bursary to go to Tuck Sport High School? Because she's shown a lot of potential. She's coming to my sessions. She's improving nicely. And he said, no, you'll help me out, So we got her a full bursary to go to Tuck Sport High School.
Brilliant.
Which is, so she started there in the high school. And then, from there it was very easy because she stayed in the boarding facility. Yeah. So it was easier for her to get to training. And she's just really shown a lot of potential.
How old is she now?
She's now grade 10.
Grade 10, right.
Yeah, so she's been there for just over 3 now. Yeah, 3.
Can she go all the way?
She can go all the way, definitely.
Because, again, what I've learned from you is swimming number 1, who can run, can learn cycling, and then the mental toughness.
Yeah, exactly.
Does she have the last one?
Yeah, she does, yeah. So she's got all 3. She's got the full package. So, yeah, and it's also something that I really feel that I need to give back in terms of, transforming the sport. It's a very whitest elite sport. And we really need, people from previously disadvantaged communities to get involved in the sport. So I've got Sebo and then I've got Lebo, who's also part of that system. His swimming isn't as good as Sebo, so she's definitely got more potential. And then I've also got 1 or 2 other athletes, that come into my system. I just want to get, and if they show potential, I've got that.
What age do you take them? Some of them are very young, obviously, but at what age do you want to hear from people, ideally? So
triathlon, when they're 12 years old, they can start competing in triathlons. Before that, people normally do the swimming, and normally I ask them, to do the biathlon and biathlon, which is swimming and running. So I normally help them anywhere from 11 to 12. And I say, first do the swimming and the running, and then we can add the bike later. So, and 12 is still very young. If they're good swimmers and good runners, they don't necessarily need to come into triathlon at 12. They can come into triathlon, I would say, from high school, 13, 14.
Okay. So that's when you'd like to hear from people. And in terms of what else do you do? I mean, we haven't discussed anything else. Obviously, you're studying and so on. I mean, do you have time for anything else, any other hobbies or any other business pursuits?
Yeah, so I'm also involved in triathlon South Africa. So
right,
I help them out with going to World Championships. I went to the Olympic Games in Rio as part of the management team.
Wow.
So that was nice to be from a different perspective. And we just recently went to Commonwealth Games in April as the manager. So that was nice to be able to transition from an athlete and then
poacher to gamekeeper
to get involved.
What's that like?
It was tough.
Yeah,
it's busy. Like it was, because I knew what the athletes wanted from my side, because I was in that same position. So to make that happen for the athletes was tough. Making sure that they get everything they want. Don't have to worry about anything. So it was hard work, but we did well. I mean, Henry got a bronze medal. In Rio, Richard was fourth.
Yeah.
And then now in the Commonwealth Games, Henry won the gold. So that was nice to be part of that as well.
But what else any other hobby? I mean, we spoke, for example, we've spoken to golfers who play the saxophone. Tennis players play guitar, as we've heard from Kevin Anderson. What else do you do in life?
So sadly, I can't play any musical instrument as much as I'd love to know. But I've taken up to running. I've always, I want to keep fit and healthy. Yeah. The first year out of triathlon, I was really hutful. I didn't do any sport, Yeah. And then after that, I was like, okay, I really need to get fit again. Running was always my first passion. So I've taken up running since then. And last year I ran my first marathon.
Wow.
Which was great. I did the Soweto Marathon here in Joburg. And I've actually signed up to do the Cape Town Marathon now in September. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So with a goal, I'd like to do Oceans next year. And then eventually Comrades is something that I'd love to do one day.
But obviously you have a business and a passion for developing the sport and young people in particular. What I ask all the people here, if you could give, the young Kate Roberts advice looking back now, if you could go back and say to the young Kate Roberts to do something differently, or advice that would really have changed things, what would it be? And of course, that's the advice you're now giving to any youngsters listening.
So in terms of doing, I mean,
triathlon and life.
Yeah, being professional sportsman is not an easy path, especially as a woman. You know, kind of the way I came through, it was never seen to be something that a woman does. You know, it was more a male-dominated industry. So being a woman and doing professional sport wasn't at that stage very popular. There's also a long life post-professional sportsman. Yeah. So it's really important to have something to fall back on.
So your BCom is very important.
Yeah, it's really important. Thank you, Dad. Yeah. I mean, people take you seriously if you've shown them you've got a degree, you know, and you can, and you've been a professional sportsman. Then they look at you seriously because they know that you can manage, you know, balance it well. So I'm still wanting to further my studies, you know. I did a sports management course through NISA, and I've done various courses as I've finished, and I feel that I'm still wanting to pursue more studies going forward, just because I feel that it's important. And you know, maybe there was something I should have done more when I was a triathlete, but it was so difficult because triathlon took so much out of me. It required so much.
But the message is to be aware of life after
to be aware of it. And a lot of us, we finish school, you know, obviously I studied, but you get involved in the sport, and the sport just takes up some of your time, and you don't really think of life post triathlon, but it comes by quickly. I mean, I did it professionally for 8 years, and it went by in a flash.
I'm a 62-year-old ex-rugby player. I know exactly what you're talking about. Listen, stay in touch with us, and we'll put all the details up on the website, and good luck with what you do. Congratulations on what you've done. Yeah. And thank you for talking to us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Did you learn as much about triathlon as I did from that marvelous insights from Kate Roberts? Thanks to Slow in the City, as usual, for hosting us. Follow us on social media or visit our website for updates. See you next time. Cheers from John Robbie.